Alhamdulillah. الحمد لله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض وجعل الظلمات والنور ثم الذين كفروا بربهم يعدلون. الحمد لله الذي أنزل على عبده الكتاب ولم يجعل له عوجا. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله لقد جاءت رسل ربنا بالحق. Now, so we returned to Tafseer and we were on the story of Bani Israel with Musa alayhi salam concerning the cow. Now, and yeah, ikhwa, akhawat, we keep saying over and over again, I would say if anyone remembers, what is one of the benefits that the scholars bring for the repetition of the story of Musa and Bani Israel so often? What is the main benefit we get from that repetition?
To teach us to stay away from.
Exactly. The story of Bani Israel teaches us what not to do. This is why it's important to know their story, because they were favored by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is one of the main hujjah, the evidences or arguments that Allah uses against them. This is one of the main evidence. And as a matter of fact, we can pivot off of that to something that was mentioned in Everyday Arabic yesterday about the sin of counting favors. Was that in Everyday Arabic? Yeah. So we talked about the sin of counting favors. I did such and such for you, right? That this, what? Invalidates the person's sadaqah, the reward of their sadaqah's loss. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تبطلوا صدقاتكم بالمن والأذى. Do not invalidate your sadaqah by mentioning what you did for a person and harming them through that, right? And we said mentioning what you did could be without harming a person, just by saying, yo, remember I gave you that, or I gave, and the way the person could harm somebody said, you know, I gave him that. If it wasn't for me, he would have nothing. So it's manni wal adha, to talk about what someone did for somebody else. This is the way to get the sadaqah rejected. There is a certain time in which it is permissible to mention a favor that someone gave to someone else. And this is especially when the person is an authority over that individual, like the husband over the wife and the parents over their children. And when the person who has been favored shows ungratefulness, obstinance, and rebellion, and at the same time discounts the favor, then at that point it is permissible to mention. At that point it is permissible to mention. For instance, the parents say to the children, oh, you're never there for me, right? Like many ungrateful children, they try to say to their parents, and it's as if they don't understand what food and clothing got them to reach to the age, and what teaching got them to reach to the age that they can even say a whole sentence that you never did anything for me. They say you weren't there for me. So then the parents at that point can say to you, what do you mean I wasn't here for you? The mother said, I nursed you. Father said, I'm the one that bought your diapers. I'm the one that bought your clothing. I'm the one that paid for your schooling. At this point, it is permissible to mention the favor when the person is being ungrateful, obstinate, and rebellious. This is not from the things that would nullify the favors. And one of the examples of a person that did this, and the other Sahaba saw him do this, and they did not make inkar, Uthman. When the people tried to accuse Uthman of hypocrisy, and he wasn't a good leader for the Muslims. This is what happened. He wasn't a good leader for the Muslims. And this and this and that. He didn't have the real spirit of Islam. And then Uthman, they said, you weren't at such and such a battle. He said, did you remember? And that pledge that the Prophet ﷺ said, this is my pledge for me, and this is my pledge for Uthman, because my wife, which was his daughter, was sick. And I was, well, you wasn't at the such and such battle. Yeah, because I was caring for my wife, and the Prophet ﷺ told me to stay back. But I am the one that bought the horses and the weapons for the battle so everybody else could fight. And he mentioned that in defense. So also, when a person is being accused or that the good that he's done is being diminished, so in defense of his honor, he can mention the favors that he did. He can mention that, and once again, we mentioned this is what? When someone is, especially over an authority, he was the Khalifa. He was the Khalifa. And they tried to discount the good that he had done for the Ummah. And he had to mention that in his defense, in his argument, but still the people didn't listen and they killed him. They still didn't listen and they killed him. Somebody that the Prophet called the possessor of the two lights because he married him to two of his daughters. When the first daughter died, he married him to the second daughter. When the second daughter died, he said, if I had a third one, I would still marry her to Uthman. From the virtues of Uthman radiallahu anhu is that the Prophet used to be shy of him because the angels were shy of him. Nah. So here, the benefit of these stories we're reading about Bani Israel is that we do not fall into what they fell into. And to be honest, we're falling into most of what they fell into. Our ummah today is falling into most of what the people of the book in general and the Jews specifically fell into. Who can mention something that the Jews fell into? Excessive questioning indeed. Barakallahu feek. Excessive questioning indeed. What's the wisdom behind kissing the black stone? What is the wisdom behind this? They're saying, what is the wisdom? Action of Allah. Because you have to realize when somebody said, what is the wisdom behind an ayah, a ruling, a statement of the Messenger of Allah is you're questioning Allah. You're not questioning the Shaykh, the Imam. You're questioning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What is the wisdom? And people are not bold enough to ask their employers. So, what's the point of this rule? They would never say that to their supervisor for the boss or for the CEO. They wouldn't say, well, I understand the rule is the shirt should be tucked in, but so what's the point of that rule? They wouldn't ask them that. They wouldn't ask them that. Muslims going to jobs, shaving their beards. And it's has nothing to do with health or safety. They're not around food or anything. But the job says you're required to shave your beard. Okay, I'm a telemarketer. Why do I have to shave my beard? I'm a security guard. What does my beard have to do with security? And so forth and so on. But they will not question why. And they just do it. But when Allah Ta'ala orders, they question Allah's orders, but they don't question the orders of human beings. SubhanAllah. So, excessive questioning, like the hadith in Bukhari, the hadith of Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu. He said, the Prophet ﷺ said, مَا نَهَيْتُكُمْ عَنْ فَاجْتَنِبُهُ. Whatever I have prohibited you from, then stay away from it. You notice in the prohibition, he didn't give any room. مَا نَهَيْتُكُمْ عَنْهُ فَاجْتَنِبُوهُ. Whatever I have prohibited you from, stay away from it. وَمَا أَمَرْتُكُمْ بِهِ فَأْتُوا مِنْهُ مَا اسْتَطَعْتُمْ. And what I've ordered you to do, then do as much of it as you can. The ulama, they say, the reason and the distinction between ability attached to orders and ability not being attached to prohibition, because in order to fulfill orders, it takes action. And action takes ability. And ability, yatathawit. It's levels. Everybody's a different level of ability. So because of that, he said, as you are able, according to your ability. What I've ordered you to do, do it according to your ability. Order with Hajj. Okay? You may not be able to afford it. You may be able to afford it, but not physically bear the journey. Or you may be able to physically bear the journey and afford it, but you're having the problem with getting the visa, so forth and so on. So now that's based on your ability. As far as the prohibitions, all it takes for us is to stop. Just don't do it. There's no physical effort taken into it. That has to do with Iman. And this is why the ulama, qarraru, they have affirmed a very important principle that tark al-manahi or tark al-ma'asi adallu ala al-iman min fi'l al-khayrat. that leaving off acts of disobedience is more evidence for iman than doing good deeds. Leaving off disobedience is more of a proof for iman than doing good deeds. لأن كل يعمل الخير. Because everybody does good. الصالح والفاجر. الصالح والفاجر, the person of righteousness and corruption, does good. ولكن لا يترك المناهي أو المعاصي إلا الصديق. But nobody leaves off prohibitions except for someone who is truthful in their iman. And this is why the real gauge of going closer to Allah is not counting, oh, I pray this salat and that salat, I give that sadaqah and that sadaqah, I read that and I do that and I do that. It's by gauging how many things that Allah had prohibited have you left off since becoming seeking istiqamah, seeking being upright. You want to be upright? The proof of you being upright is not that because you increased in good deeds, have you left off the haram. That's the proof of being upright, leaving off the haram. And this is why even in the shahada, bearing witness that Allah is one is not the first part. It's negating that there's any deity other than Allah. That's the first part. To leave off shirk comes before what? Embracing Tawheed. So if a person claims to have embraced Tawheed and he hasn't left off shirk, he's still a mushrik. If a person claims to have embraced Tawheed and he hasn't left off shirk, he's still a mushrik. Allah mentioned that in the end of Surah Yusuf. وَلَا يُؤْمِنُ أَكْثَرُهُمْ بِاللَّهِ إِلَّا وَهُمْ يُشْرِكُونَ. And most of them, they don't believe in Allah except they still associate partners with Him. The people of the book, the Christians, they say they believe in Allah. Look at the talbiyah, the hajj that the mushrik of Quraysh used to say. Labayk Allahumma labayk. At your service, O Allah, at your service. La sharika lak illa sharik huwa lak. There's no partner for you except the partner that is for you. What is that? That's Tawheed. There's no partner for you. That's it. La sharika lak. They would say, illa huwa lak. Illa sharikun huwa lak. Like in this kind of wording. They would say, you have no partner except the partners that you have. Now, so to leave off is first and foremost, then to begin to do the good deeds. فَمَنْ يَكْفُرْ بِالطَّاغُوتِ. Whoever disbelieves in Taghut وَيُؤْمِن بِاللَّهِ and believes in Allah, فَقَدْ اسْتَمْسَكَ بِالْعُرْوَةِ الْوُثْقَى, has seized the most firm grasp. Now, so this is the point of mentioning over and over again in the Qur'an the story of Bani Israel, the people of Israel, or the children of Israel. Now, so we read that part. قالوا لموسى ادع لنا ربك حتى يبين لنا صفة البقرة التي أمرنا بذبحها. So tell your Lord to explain to us or clarify for us the description of this cow that we're supposed to slaughter. فقال لهم إن الله يقول إنها. So he said, oh, indeed, Allah Ta'ala, it said, بقرة ليست كبيرة السن ولا صغيرة السن ولكن وسط بين ذلك. It shouldn't be an older cow nor a younger cow, but it should be in between those two ages. فبادروا بامتثال أمر ربكم. So race to fulfill the order of your Lord. فاستمروا في جدالهم وتعنتهم قائلين لموسى ادع ربك حتى يبين لنا ما لونها. And they continue with their extremism, their arguing, excessive questioning, and saying to Musa, call on your Lord to tell us what color it is. فقال لهم موسى إن الله يقول إنها بقرة صفراء. He said it should be a yellow cow. فاقع لونها, bright in color. تسر الناظرين, that anybody that sees it is impressed and amazed by it. Now you made it difficult for yourself. شديدة الصفرة, very, very bright yellow. تعجب كل من ينظر إليها. Everybody that sees it will be impressed by it. So the scholars bring benefits with these particular verses. I don't know if we went through them, but either way, we will go through them again. Al-Hukm al-Madhkur fi al-ayat al-ula lima qabla al-ba'tha. We did read this, that those who believe and like that. So refer to that last class because we did actually go over this the last time. So now we'll go to the next verse. The next verse. قالوا ادع لنا ربك يبين لنا ما هي إن البقرة تشابه علينا وإنا إن شاء الله لمهتدون. So they said, call on your Lord and ask us exactly what cow is it, cow it is, because indeed all cows look alike to us. Well, that was the same thing in the beginning. Okay, any cow. You were told to slaughter any cow. You're the ones who said, "Oh, how should it be?" You're the ones that kept asking and asking and asking and asking when you could have just done what you have been ordered to do. From the Tafseer of Surah An-Nasr. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح. When it comes to help of Allah and His victory. ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا. And you see the people entering the religion of Allah in crowds. فسبح بحمد ربك. I wanted to stop before that. ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا. And you see the people entering into the religion of Allah in crowds. Because this is something we always boast about. But Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhuma said, يدخلون أفواجا ويخرجون أفواجا. They will be entering the deen into crowds and leaving the deen in crowds. They will enter into the deen in crowds and they will leave the deen, exit in crowds. So, never did our ummah depend on numbers. During the time of the Prophet ﷺ, if you look at every time we were victorious, we were the least in numbers. And when we lost, it wasn't only because we had the numbers, but we depended on those numbers. Allah Ta'ala said in Surah At-Tawbah, I recommend, ya ikhwa, akhawat, read Surah At-Tawbah. Read it as a, what happens when you go to the hospital, you get a, when they check you in the hospital, not a exam. Read it as a self-exam. Read Surah At-Tawbah as a self-examination. It's a very frightening surah. It's a Medinan surah, and it's from the last of the surahs of the Qur'an that was revealed. And the majority of Surah At-Tawbah deals with hypocrisy. Read it as a self-exam. Umar radiallahu anhu was from the 10 promised Jannah. He's one of the Sahaba. It wasn't just him. He went to after being promised Jannah on the tongue of the Prophet ﷺ during his lifetime, he used to go to Hudhayfa, who was the Prophet ﷺ's confidant. The Prophet told him and revealed to him the names of the hypocrites. He asked Hudhayfa radiallahu anhu, who did the Prophet mention me? So if someone like Umar was worried about hypocrisy, who are we? Who are we? Very frightening. Very frightening. And just read it as an examination. And from there, we'll see what we have to work on. We'll see what we need to work on. Very frightening. And there's something very important about the surahs in the Quran that were revealed in Medina, because it's very rare that a verse revealed in Medina was abrogated. It's in Medina, that's it. There were verses that were revealed in Mecca that were abrogated later on in Medina. But a Medinan surah being abrogated, that's rare.
So those abrogated verses, but not in Quran now.
You have the types of abrogated verses are those which were abrogated in their recitation, but the ruling still stands, like stoning the married fornicator. It used to be a verse in the Qur'an. The recitation of the verse was abrogated, but the ruling of the verse remained. Then you have the verse that was abrogated in its ruling, but the recitation of it is still in the Qur'an. Yeah, like the ayat of the female fornicators in Surah Al-Nisa. Allah Ta'ala said what? واللاتي يأتين الفاحشة من نسائكم فاستشهدوا عليهن أربعة منكم. Allah Ta'ala said, in those women who fall into lewdness from those women who fall into lewdness from your women, then bring forth witness against them. فإن شهدوا فأمسكوهن في البيوت حتى يتوفاهن الموت أو يجعل الله لهن سبيلا. And if they bear witness against them, then lock them in their house until they die. Or Allah Ta'ala decrees something else. وَاللَّذَانِ يَأْتِيَانِهَا مِنْكُمْ فَآذُوهُمَا. And the two men who do such an act of lewdness, then harm them. The ruling then was if two men fell into fornication, not together, because no homosexuality ever took place on the time of the Prophet. So if because a man who was guilty of fornication, then harm them. They would spit on them and hit them with shoes and curse them in the streets and embarrass them in public. That was the ruling. And then after that, Surah An-Nur was revealed. الزانية والزاني فاجلدوا كل واحد منهما مئة جلدة. And then the men and women got the same exact ruling. The female and male fornicator that's not married, then beat them 100 lashes. That was revealed, and that abrogated that ayah, but it's still recited in the Qur'an. Allah Ta'ala said in Surah Al-Baqarah, the 17th, page 17 of the Qur'an, Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah Ta'ala said what? ما ننسخ من آية أو ننسها نأتي بخير منها أو مثلها ألم تعلم أن الله على كل شيء قدير ألم تعلم أن الله له ملك السماوات والأرض وما لكم من دون الله من ولي ولا نصير. Allah Ta'ala said, never do we cause a verse to be abrogated or forgotten except that we replace it that which is better than it or like it. Did you not know that Allah has power over everything? Did you not know that to Allah belongs the dominions of the heavens and the earth, and you have no one other than Allah that can be a protector nor a helper? Yeah, no. So Allah clarified. Now, subhanAllah. Quran is detailed, everything. So you have those two types of abrogating. The ruling is still practiced, but the recitation, the verse has been abrogated in its tilawah, in its recitation. So it's not in the Quran anymore. Or it's still recited in the Quran, but the ruling has been abrogated with the two examples that we just brought. No. So they said, call on your Lord to make clear for us what type of cow it is. Indeed, all cows resemble are the same to us. So the ulama, they say, inshallah, inna inshallah muhtadun. And indeed, by the permission of Allah, we will be guided, or we are guided. The ulama, they say, ثم تمادوا في تعنتهم قائلين ادع لنا ربك حتى يبين لنا مزيدا من صفاتها. They even went to more extremes in their extremism, saying, call on your Lord to explain to us more descriptions of this cow. لأن البقرة المتصف بالصفات المذكورة كثير لا نستطيع تعيينها من بينها. Because the cows that are mentioned with these descriptions are many, we are not able to distinguish one from the other. مؤكدين أنهم إن شاء الله مهتدون إلى البقرة المطلوب ذبحها. So they're saying, and they're ascertaining or saying, being sure that they will be guided, inshallah, to the cow that is desired or that is wanted to be slaughtered. قال إنه يقول إنها بقرة لا ذلول تثير الأرض ولا تسقي الحرث مسلمة لا شية فيها. قالوا الآن جئت بالحق فذبحوها وما كانوا يفعلون. فقال لهم موسى إن الله يقول إن صفة هذه البقرة أنها غير مذللة بالعمل. That's so Musa said to them, indeed, this cow is not something that is used for work. في الحراثة, in plowing the fields. ولا في سقاية الأرض, nor is it used to irrigate the land. وهي سالمة من العيوب, and it doesn't have any blemishes. ليس فيها علامة من لون آخر غير لون الأصفر. It doesn't have any sign of any color other than yellow. وعندئذ قالوا, and at that point they said, الآن جئت بالحق. Right? الآن جئت بالوصف الدقيق الذي يعين البقرة تماما. So now you have came. I'm sorry, I didn't even translate the verse. So they said, he said, indeed, Allah Ta'ala says it should be a cow that is not used to plow the earth, nor to irrigate the land, free from any blemish. They said, now you have brought the truth. So they slaughtered it, but they really weren't going to do it. So we read that part already. He said it should be blemishless, not any color in it except for the color of yellow. They said at that point, now you have brought the description that is very precise, and tells us exactly what cow it is. وَذَبَحُوهَا بَعْدَ أَنْ أَوْشَكُوا أَلَّا يَذْبَحُوهَا بِسَبَبِ الْجِدَالِ وَتَعَنُّتِ. So they slaughtered it, even though they were on the verge of not slaughtering it because of their constantly arguing in their extremism.
Maybe they were afraid that the killer would be named or
Revealed.
revealed.
The thing is, we can't even find that excuse for them because they were like that in everything. In everything, with every prophet. It wasn't just Musa, it was Musa, Zechariah, Yahya. They had a problem. Anbiya, these people they claim they believe in. Anbiya. If we look at our ummah, we find the same thing. We find the same thing in our ummah. It's sad to say, and it's scary. It's scary when we see people. And you may have heard, I said it before, I think I mentioned it on Jumu'ah or in another class. But, I was an atheist. I was a Kafir. My family were kuffar. I'm the first Muslim in my family. Wallahi, giving da'wah to my kuffar relatives and convincing them about Islam was easier for me than it is with some Muslims to convince them that, oh no, this is Islam. An ayah from the Qur'an was easier. My family were telling about, no, the Qur'an says this. That does make sense. You go to the Muslims like, well, is that what it really means? And Muslims, they say their deen is Islam. They argue with the Qur'an. My family, mashallah, one after the other. My youngest sister, then my youngest brother, then my middle sister, then my second, next to the older sister, then after that, my mother, then my father. Except Islam. They say, yeah, it does make sense. SubhanAllah. I mean, my mother was the most difficult one. But in the end, she said, you're right. I can't argue. I'm being stubborn. I can't argue with what you're saying. I was just being stubborn. And finally, accepted Islam. But when you say somebody, this is my book, this is what I believe in, and then they argue with it, like, SubhanAllah, you said you believe in this. It's amazing. It's amazing. And it reminds me of the Jews. Because they claim they believe in the Torah. And when the person committed zina, the Jewish person in Medina, and they came to the Prophet ﷺ, said somebody from our nobles, he committed zina, but he's this and that, he's supposed to be this special person. They said, well, what should we do? The Prophet ﷺ said, what does your book say? Allah revealed about that in Surah Al-Ma'idah. وَكَيْفَ يُحَكِّمُوكَ وَعِنْدَهُمُ التَّوْرَاةُ فِيهَا حُكْمُ اللَّهِ. He said, and how can they come to you for the ruling of Muhammad and they have the Torah and in it is the ruling of Allah? SubhanAllah. And then they turn away. These individuals are not believers. So now, the Muslim, if he does the same thing, the ruling is the same for the Muslim. When it gets to the issue of takfir, we know that the issue of takfir is a very dangerous issue. But it's a ruling in Islam. And it's in the books of fiqh. It's in the books of Aqidah. You can't get away from it. It's a reality. Allah Ta'ala mentioned it first time he mentioned it in Surah Al-Baqarah. Then Allah Ta'ala mentioned it over maybe twice in Surah Al-Nisa. Then Allah Ta'ala mentioned it again in Surah Al-Ma'idah. Then Allah Ta'ala mentioned it again in Surah Al-An'am. You find it over and over. Allah Ta'ala mentioned Al-Ridda, people apostating from the deen. So people leave Islam. And the person that leaves Islam is kafir. And just like people enter Islam through belief and statements, they exit Islam through belief and statements. People enter Islam through belief, statements, and actions. They exit Islam through belief, statements, and actions. It's reality. It's the reality. So people make statements that will take them out of the fold of Islam. And if it's from those issues that need research, then there's an excuse for ignorance. But after iqamatul hujjah, after the evidence is established, then the ruling of the individual, that person is left the fold of Islam. It's serious. It's serious. We look at it, maybe we take it serious when it comes to appliances. But everything that you get, your warranty is based on you using it properly. If you do not use it properly and you let it get tampered with, your warranty is invalidated. So what about your shahada? Your warranty that shahada will get you into Jannah as long as you don't violate it. If you violate that shahada through a belief system, through an action, through a statement that contradicts the shahada, then your guarantee of Jannah is gone. It's gone. Look at those men who made mockery of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba. What do they say? They say they have the biggest bellies, and they're the greediest when it comes to eating, and they're the most cowardly on the battlefield. And then one of the Sahaba was sitting there and heard it, and he said, Wallahi, Surah At-Tawbah. He said, Wallahi, I'm going to go tell the Prophet ﷺ what you said. Before he got to the Prophet, the ayah was already revealed. Before he even reached to the Prophet was already revealed. And then when those hypocrites found out the Prophet knew, they ran behind the Prophet. Ya Rasulullah. The Prophet, Allah Ta'ala said to the Prophet, وَلَئِنْ سَأَلْتَهُمْ. And if you ask them about what they said, لَيَقُولَنَّ إِنَّمَا كُنَّا نَخُوضُ وَنَلْعَبُ. They're going to say, no, we're just joking, we're just playing around. How many Muslims make mockery of the deen and say they're just playing? Make fun of the deen, of the beard, of the thobe, of a short thobe, they make fun of the deen, of niqab, of hijab, they make fun of people of the deen. Not knowing this could take you out of the fold of Islam. The early man, when they speak about this, and it's amazing that the issue of apostasy, ridda, is mentioned in the books of fiqh, not the books of aqidah. It's mentioned in the books of fiqh, majority. You find it in some books of aqidah, but mainly it's in the books of fiqh. Right? So okay.
What I asked is on this issue.
Now, so Allah Ta'ala said, وَلَئِنْ سَأَلْتَهُمْ. And if you would have asked them, لَيَقُولَنَّ إِنَّمَا كُنَّا نَخُوضُ وَنَلْعَبُ. They're going to swear that we were only joking and just, playing around. قُلْ. Allah ordered the Prophet ﷺ, قُلْ أَبِاللَّهِ. Was it about Allah? وَآيَاتِهِ. In his ayat. وَرَسُولِهِ. In his messenger. كُنْتُمْ تَسْتَهْزِئُونَ. That you were making mockery about. لَا تَعْتَذِرُوا. Make no excuses. لَقَدْ كَفَرْتُمْ بَعْدِ إِيمَانِكُمْ. You have disbelieved after having faith. On the very next page, Allah Ta'ala said, قَدْ كَفَرْتُمْ بَعْدِ إِسْلَامِكُمْ. So he mentioned both of them, Islam and Iman. You have disbelieved after having believed. For making mockery of the Prophet ﷺ. So anything, if somebody is doing something that is authentically reported that the Prophet ﷺ did it, a belief that the Prophet ﷺ believed, because belief is first, that he had, an act of ibadah that the Prophet ﷺ had, and he's made fun of because of this, something that the Prophet, and the person makes fun of that, this could remove the person from Islam. And because Allah Ta'ala said in this issue, because we know we have al-udhr bil-jahl, excuse for ignorance. In this ayah, Allah himself said, La ta'tadiru, make no excuses. So they said these are one of those issues in which there's no excuse, because Allah said it wasn't an excuse. كفرتم بعد إيمانكم. The ulama say why? Because it is impossible for a person to hold something in esteem and make fun of it at the same time. It's impossible. It's impossible. Now, so it's very dangerous. We're living in very dangerous days. And this is why living amongst those who disbelieve is so dangerous, because that way of freedom of speech makes the person be able to, they do it with their religion. They do it with their religion. They make fun of Isa alayhi salam. They say they're Christian, but they make fun of Isa alayhi salam. They make drawings of him being being a homosexual. Oh, Isa, he never got married because he was gay. They say this. The Quran. That's it. They claim that they're Christian. Yeah. The things that they said about Nuh alayhi salam, the things that they said about Ibrahim, Dawood, they make fun. They have no problem with making mockery while claiming their faith. We don't have that option. We don't have that option on that faith. Except that we're going to end up just like them. Bali. Oh, depending on the level of the person knowledge, maktub alayna. Either Allah's anger is going to be upon us if the person is knowledgeable, or the person is going to be from the Bali if he's ignorant. Wallahu musta'an. So we have to really pay attention when we're reading these verses, as if this is not folklore, fairy tales. That's another issue in the culture, being in the un-Islamic culture, that if you read the Tafseer of Surah Al-Luqman, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَشْتَرُوا لَهُ الْحَدِيثِ لِيُضِلَّ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. And from those mankind of those who purchase lahul hadith, vain stories. So the tafsir for his two tafsirs for his ayah, in order to lead away from the path of Allah. One of the tafsir, Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, said, Wallahi, huwa al-ghina, Wallahi, huwa al-ghina, Wallahi, al-ghina. He said, Wallahi, this verse is talking about music. Wallahi, this verse is talking about music. Wallahi, this verse is talking about music. That's Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu. So that verse prohibits music. That's the evidence for the prohibition of music. For those who try to do something else. Now, also, there was a man who used to go to Rome when the Prophet in Mecca, when the Prophet was receiving revelation. He used to go to Rome and memorize and get all of the stories of ancient Roman history. He used to try to battle the Prophet because the Prophet, his dawah was gaining following. So he would try to come and recite the stories of Roman folklore and all of this to compete with the stories in the Qur'an, in order to pull the people away from listening to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Point being is that we in this country grow up on folklore and fairy tale, to the point that it could affect someone's iman in the stories of the prophets and the Sahaba. Because all of those stories that we grew up learning and listening to, Cinderella, Snow White, and all of that, it wasn't real. So now, anytime we hear a story of the past, let alone let it have miracles in it, La ilaha illallah, it becomes a challenge, right? Oh, that reminds me of the story of Hercules. That reminds me of the story of, and the person has to understand that this is revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every single story is true and real. And real. This is why the importance of disbelief and taghut before embracing Islam, so that when the information reaches the person, his heart is able to accept it completely. Wallahu musta'an. Now, when you speak like this, people say, oh, he's trying to make takfir. No, I'm trying to stop you from falling into takfir of yourself. I'm not trying to make you a kafir, I'm trying to keep you a Muslim. But you're talking reckless in the deen of Allah, you're trying to make yourself a kafir. You hear ayah from the Qur'an and you puff yourself up. I don't agree with that. A'udhu billah. That's it. Ayah from the Qur'an. It doesn't need your agreement. It doesn't need your agreement. This is the problem of the freedom of speech. In Islam, we don't believe in freedom of speech. We only believe in freedom to speak the truth. We don't believe in freedom of speech in Islam. The Prophet said, "Man kana yu'minu billahi wa yawm al-akhir, falyaqul khayr aw liyasmut." He said, whoever believes in Allah on the last day, let him say what is good or be quiet. The Prophet said, he was describing Jannah, and he said, هل أدلك على مالك ذلك كله? In the hadith of Mu'adh bin Jabal. He said, "Shall I tell you about what could give you all of that?" He said, "Bala ya Rasulullah." Of course, ya Rasulullah. He said, "Imsak alayka hada wa masaka bi lisani." He said, "Control this," and he held his tongue. He said, "Allah aqub an-nas fi an-nar ala manakhirihim or ala wujuhihim." He said, "Is not the thing, the most thing that's going to cause the people to fall into the hellfire on their noses or on their faces, illa hasa'id al-sinatihim, except for the hardest of their tongues." In the hadith in Tirmidhi, the Prophet ﷺ said, Inna ibn Adam la yalfad bi kalimatin la yulqi laha balan yahwi biha fi nari jahannam 70 kharifa. وفي رواية من سخط الله. He said, indeed, the son of Adam will say a word, a statement from that which angers Allah, that he's not giving it any consideration, and because of it, he'll be thrown in the hellfire at a distance of 70 years. One statement. So we'll stop here. This is the constant arguing that the Muslims have begun to do in their own deen. Argue, argue, argue. In their own deen against verses in the Qur'an while claiming Iman. Claiming that those verses don't apply for today. So you received the Qur'an with an expiration date? I didn't receive that copy. I didn't receive that copy. Good till 2022. Good till 2016. You received the Quran, you opened it up and said these verses are good till to a certain date. SubhanAllah. I need that copy. So this is what's happening to the Muslims. And the only thing we can do is warn. Put out the information, but it's upon the one who hears it to follow through. Like I said, all you have to do is read the Quran. I told him, I said, brother, what are you doing? I said, do you have one ayah or one hadith that supports your position? No. Wow. You're still arguing though. You're still arguing. I said, no. Do you? I said, yes. Yes. This is where we've come. This is what we've come to. Are there any statements or questions about what we went through so far? We can talk about that now. If not, we'll stop here. Okay. No. No.
A lot of hadith is not applied to the Islam and Sahaba. It's not applied to.
Give me an example of that.
I mean, thing was done like in the past. The traveling was on the camel, right? Nowadays,
That's not hadith.
I'm trying to give an example. Like okay, it's just not that deep.
Yeah, like for instance, things that have to do with worldly life that the Prophet didn't order with and prohibited, that wouldn't fall under the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The things that we take from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life and the life of the Sahaba are those things that get us to Jannah and save us from the hellfire. So everything that they did during that time that would get us to Jannah or save us from the hellfire will always apply. It doesn't matter if it's an ayah or hadith. For instance, the argument of modern days about the use of the microphone for the adhan. So, is this a bid'ah? Okay, linguistically, yes. It's an innovation. It didn't exist before. Religiously, a bid'ah, in the very most simplest form, is a statement, a belief, statement, or action that the person who believes it, does it, or says it, believes it will get them closer to Allah, and it is not supported by Qur'an and Sunnah. A belief, statement, or action. So now, if the person grabbed the mic and believed this, it's a holy mic, and with this mic, the adhan can only be called with this blessed mic, and now, okay, we say you can't use that mic. That microphone is haram. But if the person is using a mic, and this is why the importance of the study of usul al-fiqh. The ulama say in usul al-fiqh, وسائل الأمور أو قواعد الفقهية وسائل الأمور كالمقاصد, that which leads to a thing takes the ruling of what it leads to. So the goal of the adhan, when the Sahaba used to get on the highest point, was in order for the voice to reach out. The goal of the use of the microphone is to get the voice to reach out. So it takes the ruling of going up to the highest point. The microphone takes the ruling of going to the highest point, right? And like that. So that wouldn't interfere with the calling of the adhan. However, our problem is that we contradict the purpose of the adhan. Why? Because we're weak and we're living under the rule of the disbelievers. So we're afraid. These microphones should be used to call the adhan when there are speakers on the outside of the masjid. Other than that, the adhan should be called outside. Because the whole purpose of it, what do you call it? Hayya ala salah. We're in here already with you. What are you telling us for? You need to be telling the people that are not here. Telling us to come to salah. We're in the masjid. So the adhan was for the people that were outside of the masjid. The iqamah is for the people inside of the masjid. And this is why, that's also, I mean, to be honest, I like it, I enjoy it. But in reality, it's not sunnah. When they call, in the Muslim country, they call the adhan and iqamah on the loudspeaker, on the microphone. The adhan should be called on the microphone. The iqamah shouldn't be called on the microphone. I'm gonna tell you something from the bad habits that I fell into because the iqamah was called on the microphone. Well, you didn't hear the iqamah. You wait until what? You hear the iqamah and then go down to the salah. Allah al-musta'an. I fell into that at one point.
I understand what you're saying, like that some of the masajid, especially back home, masajid are very huge.
Yeah.
And people are everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, in Pakistan, they call it Badshahi Mosque
Mhm.
in Lahore. And they have a masjid, then they have like a lawn, what they call it, like open, right?
Yeah.
If you call the Aqama inside, and obviously there's a time difference between the Azan and Aqama, right? Are immediate. So if you call the Aqama also on the loudspeaker,
Yeah.
so people can hear and they can join, sometimes that might.
But see, that's the thing. That's the laziness that I was affected by for a period of time. What happens is that because you're going to hear it, you wait for it. But if you know that, okay, you hear the adhan. If we start reading about the sunnah, what we're supposed to do when we hear the adhan, stop everything we're doing. Make wudu, make the adhkar, make turakah, and start walking to the masjid. With every step, as sinners remove a good deed in this place like that, and we get there for the iqamah. But because we're depending on, I'm not going to hear the iqamah anyway, so I'm not going to miss the salah. And then you'll find what? You probably experienced it. When you hear the iqamah, you and all your neighbors, everybody's coming out now to get you. So it creates a laziness. If you hear the adhan and you know that the iqamah is not going to be called on the loudspeaker, what's going to happen? It's going to make you get to the masjid before the iqamah. But if you know you're going to hear the iqamah, you might sit talking to the wife, playing with the kids, and like that. Allah Akbar, Akbar. Okay, I gotta go. You go like that.
But is it okay to call the Aqama on the speaker, use the microphone?
You mean what is the ruling? Is it haram or halal? It's halal. It's halal. It's halal. No. But the point that I'm making is that when you look at something that's done, even though it's permissible, you look at the benefit or the harm of it. So the harm of it is that people are not following the sunnah of the adhan, getting to the masjid on time, praying tahiyyat al-masjid, praying the sunnah of whatever salat is in, and all of that, because they're waiting depending on hearing the aqamah. Like that. When he heard the nidah,
He forgot his family.
ain't now. It goes, the sunnah of the Prophet was, our mother Aisha said the Prophet used to be في خدمة أهله. He used to be in the service of his family. فلما سمع النداء لم يعرفنا ولم نعرفه. But when he heard the adhan, he didn't know us, nor did we know him. That's it. Got about everybody once he heard the adhan, and that's the benefits of the adhan. And if we in Flint and in any other city, if we want to achieve what they've achieved in Minnesota, the adhan for all 5 prayers on loudspeakers everywhere. The adhan for all side in Hamtramck and like that. We have to do what they did. They did it. They made it an issue. But if we don't make it an issue, we keep being docile and cow. I mean, this is American culture. If anyone is here and they want to really understand American culture was based on revolution, based saying no, these are my human rights. These are my religious rights. These are pushing the Constitution. Nothing was achieved. Nothing was achieved. our brothers that come from different countries will come over here. The reason why there's not a water fountain saying no Indians, no Ivory Coast, no like that is because our ancestors died over that. This bathroom is for this, calling you by a racist slur. People died for that. People died so people can come get off the plane and come over here and go into Walmart. Before, African Americans sitting in Woolworth and Brighton, Greensboro, North Carolina. They sat at the in Woolworth. They sat at the restaurant and had drinks poured on their heads, food thrown in and spat on, just because of the color of their skin. So people die for the freedom that we have. So and so when it seems like we're still, revolution, is because we know that you're not going to get anything in America saying, "Oh, could you please give us this?" No, you have to actually show that you want it, show that you know it's your right, that you understand the law. You guys said this is your constitution. Your constitution says freedom of religion, and we need to call out to the prayer. Other than that, it will not happen. It will not happen being nice. It will not happen asking for them to pass a vote. They would never vote for it. But when enough people, because they're worried about now that the world is looking at them, that's the only reason they let up of people of color, is because now the world can see what they're doing. Cameras and everything. So it's now out there and they want to be the moral leaders of the world. How can y'all do that? Y'all protect what do you call it? Yeah, they'll protect the dolphin, but they'll bomb a whole village of Muslims. La ilaha illallah. They have laws that you can't eat dolphin meat. You can't kill dolphins. But you can bomb a village of Muslims in Palestine, in Syria, in Burma, in Thailand, in Indonesia. Humans can die, but dolphins no. So these are things that we have to understand, that in order for us to be established and to get something here, you have to talk about it. You have to, I'm not saying we have to go out and do everything that was done during those times, like in the civil rights movements, but it has to be a real voice really asking for it. But if we keep being scary and like that, we're gonna be like the minority Muslims everywhere else in this country, that they just exist, but they have no meaning. We'll be sitting within existence where we're allowed to take up a space, but that space we take up has no meaning. So, no. So anything that was during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, anything during that time applies. Hadith, Qur'an, anything during that time applies if it has anything to do with going to Jannah or getting away from the hellfire. As far as mode of travel and all of that, then that doesn't apply. That doesn't apply, because that is just from the normal things, the principle and the principles of fiqh. It says that wal aslu fi a'datina ibaha, and the origin in our customs is that they're permissible. Hatta yajibu sarf al ibaha, until there comes something that makes it impermissible. So all customs and customary practices are permissible unless comes an evidence to make them impermissible, because they oppose the Qur'an and Sunnah. So from that is mode of travel. Mode of travel, different from place to place. You have places that have more horses than camels. For the places where camels were prevalent, they use camels. Horses were prevalent, they use horses. Some of them use mules, donkeys, and like that. So that's all fine. It's all fine. Even cars, it's just an imitation of the horse. How do they judge the power of a car? Horsepower. It's just we just try to mimic what Allah Ta'ala put here for us. We can't do it. We can't. No. So we'll stop here, inshallah ta'ala. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
No, this is Jihad.
Naam Jihad.
So a little while ago, my daughter had a question for you.
MashaAllah.
And her question was, are you in a chain of hadith?
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Musta'an. Now. What does she mean when she say in a chain of hadith?
Meaning a part of the chain. We had a discussion with my daughters about, a little bit about hadith. We were talking about chain and things like that. So she just came out of nowhere and said, is the brother Hassan in a chain of hadith?
No.
I said, I don't know. Allah asked the brother about.
Alhamdulillah. Now I'm in a chain of the books of hadith, the chain of the books of hadith. The chain of hadith are the men, the Sahaba, that lead to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that chain includes those men that met those men that met those men that met the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then you have the period in the second generation in which the ulama collected those chains and they put them into books. So then after that, the chain, the first chain is the chain that led directly to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then the second chain was the chain that led to those who collected those chains and put them in books. So then after that point, the person's chain would lead to the book of the collector. So for instance, in Sahih Bukhari, I'm the 27th person in my chain. So there are 27 people, 26 people between me and Imam al-Bukhari and his Sahih. So I'm in that chain now.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair.
Ameen wa iyyak. Allah yabarak. Okay, subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.